All right, take a look at this, folks. What the devil am I doing on a little plot of land here on the Ipswich River? We're actually sort of right around the Green Street Bridge looking up to the cove. And anyhow, we're here because the river played a interesting part in the history of Ipswich. And we are going to discuss with two luminaries who you are about to meet. You already know them. They've been on the show before. And we're going to talk about the days of Prohibition, rum running in Ipswich. So hopefully we've changed some of the names to protect the innocent. Anyhow, to my left, come on, Bill George, one of the ex officio chairman of the board of the Brain Trust down at Sophia's. And to his left, the irresistible I need a dictionary, you know. Jake Burridge, okay? Now you've met Bill. He's been on a ton of times. Jake's been on. He was part of that panel on the Robinson Shipyard. But anyhow, fellas, now you weren't directly involved in the rum running, you guys, right? I mean, I think the statute of limitations is up. So if you wanted to admit it, but
I hope so.
Okay. Who wants to start?
Oh, I don't know.
Go ahead, Bill.
I don't know what to really say. It's such a broad topic. We have a few photographs here, and why don't I turn these over to Paul and let him ask me questions or ask Jake questions as the boating part of it and so forth. That's the best way to do it.
Wow.
There's no way to organize that, really. That's a Coast Guard. We'll start sort of in the middle. That's a Coast Guard patrol boat, the kind of boat that patrolled the area to stop the rum runners, which were basically... why don't I give it a little introduction? They were basically bringing in alcoholic beverages from Canada. That's or alcohol from they called it Belgian alky, which is they'd make bathtub gin from that. It was the raw alcohol, and it would come in 5-gallon cans, I believe, and they'd take it and buy. You know, they'd make gin out of it in the bathtub gin. You've heard of bathtub gin?
Yeah, I've heard of bathtub gin.
So they literally make gin out of it. And
where
these boats...
Where did the stuff primarily come in?
Came in... The boat would come into Ipswich Bay out there, maybe, 5-mile limit? Whatever limit there was. And they'd send these rum-running boats, which we have some pictures there of.
Yeah.
There's one right there.
Wow.
I mean, let's show that one. They were sort of like cigarette boats today. They were long and narrow. See that? And there were Ipswich people that built some of these boats, and their names are public, but I'm not going to use them.
Let Jake could use them, because Jake told me, when I gave the talk about the history of Ipswich boat building.
To give Jake
what were those boats that, was it Hull? They built them?
Judd Hull.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Judd Hull did the boat building in Ipswich.
Yeah, but what about these boats? They were all called the...
They're called Victory.
Victory?
Yeah. Let me see these a moment, and I'll just...
But they were specifically built, right? I mean, they were...
Yeah, well, they had engines like this.
He built 5 boats that I know of, I heard of, that went to Beverly, and he still built boats for this area here. And the boats that went to Beverly, we figured they went for the rum runners. They were called Victory boats.
Wow.
They were built to last 2 years at the most, because we used iron nails in the hull. We all knew that, and Judd knew it too, because it certainly wasn't going to last a lifetime.
Well, it gave him some repeat business, right? The guy had to buy a new boat in 2 years. Old Judd was a pretty smart businessman, all right?
But, really, it's I wonder why they painted them white, because they used them at night. There's another one in here of the actual picture of Ipswich. This is the one... This one. This is the picture of them unloading the Ipswich authorities unloading the boat that they captured. Jake knows about that. Let's let Jake tell that story.
Which one's that?
This is the one where the boat ran aground and they heard the Liberty engines. And,
no, that's not it.
Well, that makes a good story. Anyway.
No.
We can't research.
That's not the boat that ran aground.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's what you got to tell these
I know
folks.
it. We got to hear that story.
This is an incredible story, and I've heard it from...
But this is another. This is Ipswich.
Different
sources.
That is Ipswich Cracker
No,
boat.
tell about the running aground.
Tell about the running aground. That's right.
Running aground, I can tell you what I heard about it. You hear all kinds of
I
stories.
know you do.
But one story that I heard, my father worked on a Little Neck. I worked with him. One morning we went to work, and Pete Damon came down. He was a bank, owned a bank, and asked my father if he got any scotch. My father looked at him, didn't know what he was talking about. He said, well, Bill, I tell you. He said, there's scotch all over the rivers, and the clam diggers are digging up bottles of scotch. And my father couldn't understand why. So we looked off, and there was a white boat that was aground close to Treadwell's Island. And it was run aground because that evening or late night, the man running up the Ipswich River misjudged the tide. It's a high coast tide, and he ran aground the flats, and he figured he could make it off, and he rowed the boat trying to clear the flats, but he was heading for Treadwell's Island. He hadn't cleared the flats. And he had one big Liberty engine in it. I heard two, but it checked back to one. Yeah. And that Liberty engine was powerful, roared, everyone could hear it, and the people on the neck came down and told us about the Liberty engine they heard. And anyway, he ran aground, and then they started to unload scotch. Well, the people, now these were real scotch, not Bill was relating to the whiskey that they made gin with. These were real bottles of scotch. Yep. And they unloaded by the case, trying to get it to Treadwell's Island. And they made 4 or 5 trips, and 3 or 4 of those trips of scotch, the cases broke, and the bottles went, they didn't bother going back, got more. So they broke several bottles, several cases of scotch, and those bottles were all over the river. Now the tide was coming in, and about that time the tide turned. Well, the bottles went upriver, and when they came down, they ended up on the clam flats, and that's where the clam diggers came in, and they dug bottles of scotch.
I think Jake was down there. He was a kid, but he was probably there. So he knows a lot about it.
This must have been a heck of a party for the clam.
I know.
Oh,
well.
boy. So anyway, those were the bottles, but the cases of scotch, no one knows whatever happened to those cases of scotch. They get around town. I know definitely that some of those cases ended up in the local politicians in town. Ipswich. Bill George wasn't there. Some of his forefathers were there.
That was in another area.
So anyway, that boat that ran aground, it was not heading for Gould's Creek. Now, Gould's Creek was a good dump-off place where the rum runners all were running. However, this boat was heading for Town Landing, and Town Landing was cleared so they could come in, dump quickly, and get out. Now, Town Landing was well patrolled, excepting this night, it was not patrolled because for some reason the police department was on the other side of town.
I wonder why, huh?
They used many cases to keep the cops away. A fake fire and a call, an automobile accident. Don't forget, Ipswich had probably a 4 or 5 man police force, right, and it was quite easy to get the police away.
Listen, I also heard, didn't that you sometimes land the hooch or the scotch or the rum off of Jeffrey's Neck Road and then onto Little Neck Road, that stretch?
Probably.
I don't know about that. I can tell you Gould's Creek, a definite yes, I knew there. Town Landing, I knew. Fox Creek, right up into Fox Creek, way into the bridge at Fox Creek. Gould's Creek, they go under the bridge, and there's a boatyard on the right, and that was
Shepard's.
I forget the name.
No, it was Shepard's.
Shepard's.
Oh, okay, if you say so. Yeah. Anyway, that was unloaded there many times.
Yeah.
And those places I know. There are other places in Ipswich that I heard about, but I can't repeat the other.
Well, listen, Mr. George has a story that I think probably involved Little Neck Road about, well, you tell the story.
No, well, what it did was it involved Labor and Vein Road, where Jake's talking about.
Oh, okay.
This one particular night, the way I hear it, and I hear it from people like the late Harold Bowen, and people like, they were around too, you know, and they were, Harold tells that some guy, they had a watch there for the
cops,
police who were up. I was reading again from Harold Bowen. I got to get this in. I was going to interrupt, but they'd burn, take a barn or something,
Yeah.
and light it up on Limebrook Road, and it would draw all the people, the cops, the firemen, everybody up there. Then they'd come in. But they had a lookout planted. I know who it was, but I'm not going to mention the name because there's still a lot of family around.
Wasn't
But
Jake, was it?
no, you can. We'll keep away from the lawsuits and stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, they put him there, and they said, if you see a white truck come in, and here's a white truck right here. See that old truck? That's a white. I don't know whether they make them today or not.
I don't think so.
But they said you sound the alarm if a white truck comes by or something. So they had him there, and the next day he said, they said to him, "Did you see any white trucks?" He said, "No, they were all either green or blue, the ones that went by." And that was a story that made the rounds all through my earlier years.
Wow.
And it was actually probably happened because I've heard that story about other towns, and I did not live my what's the right word? It wasn't quite far enough for ancestors, but my predecessors were involved in this kind of thing up the coast a ways. I won't get any more specific than that.
Really?
And, yeah,
Wow.
they were, and well, everybody was. Not literally everybody, but it was a broad part of the community was involved in this, and there was Jake remembers this fire down on down on Safford Street in Ipswich.
That one there, yeah.
These are the same. I mean, they come from the same lot of pictures. It's the same place, different angle. Now, the place was called Safford Stables, I found out. I did a little research last night in Harold Bowen's book, and he tells a little bit about it. He told the story about basically the one that they told about, that Jake told, unloading the scotch. And this was a fire, and they found out, I don't know if you want to see these, that you can notice in there that they had there's barrels and I don't think there's any stills in there, but there might be. This is the results of the fire. I think the fire was in 1930. You can see the Catholic Church over there, and you can see the landmarks and so forth.
What were the actual years of Prohibition?
1920 to 1933.
Okay.
It was voted in it took a while to get it ratified.
Is that the Volstead Act?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it had to be ratified by the states.
Okay.
And they blame the women when the women got the right to vote. I'm not saying this is what happened, but one theory is the men were all over fighting World War I, and the women got the vote, and they put this act in.
I heard it was driven by women.
That's the popular one side of it. And just while I'm on my end of it here, we've got a couple of pictures of Liberty engines in World War I surplus. See it? This is the sort of engine they took and put it in a boat like this, a fast-running boat. And they could outrun most of these Coast Guard boats.
How many cylinders and stuff? These things?
Well, the Liberty was a V12.
Ho-ho!
6 on the side.
Wow.
And this is this is a 4. No, a V8. This is a World War I. But the point isn't how many cylinders they had, that they could buy these surplus at the time. It was right after World War I was over. And they'd put them in a boat like that, and they could move. I mean, that may not be a rum runner, but it's like a rum runner, and it's built as a rum runner.
There's a boat like that down in Newport that they said came from Prohibition. They give harbor tours in it.
I think, truthfully,
it looks like
I think
that.
this boat comes from down Newport. I bought, this is an old picture, one of my old but that's good information. I bet that's physically the same boat.
In fact, I think
This is one of the big Coast Guard boats that patrolled offshore. This is how big are those, Jake? 100 footers, 200? I don't know.
That's a 78 foot.
Yeah. And Jake's the boat guy. And here's another big early marine engine. They all use different sort of engines.
Listen, I want to get back to the thing about Harold. Harold Bowen actually wrote something?
Yeah, there's a lot of Harold Bowen printed articles in the Ipswich Today, the newspaper. And I have the books. If I'm speaking to the audience, you get a chance to pick up these books, buy them. They're worth it on the used book market. And
Wow.
And it's a, you know, he had this picture in there. I copied that last night. He wouldn't mind, by the way, if he knows what we're doing.
Oh, God, no, he'd love
he
it.
always liked
Yeah,
me,
oh, yeah.
and he let me. He taught me a lot. And anyway, you know,
I am trying to track down at the urging of Fran Richards of the Ipswich Library. She wants me to do
good point.
a paper on rum running. That's why I'm talking to these guys. There's not much info. But Harold Bowen was a source of the info, and Louise Hodgkins, Louise Jewett's aunt,
That's right.
supposedly wrote a paper under some grant.
Yeah, she didn't supposedly. She did it.
She did it.
I was there
But-
when she gave the speech.
But it disappeared.
I know it.
And
And it's a very ironic situation. She did this. I was ready to talk about this because
Okay.
you told me what was going to happen. In the 1970s, early 70s, we're going back a while now, she gave a presentation. I'm trying to think of what they had for equipment. I don't know whether it was on, you know, the early version of TV or what, but it was up the Herd House.
Okay.
I was there. I was sitting there, and she gave a speech about rum running, and it was a masterpiece. And the reason that she did it, there was a grant that people that we got from some government. You know, I don't know if it was the federal or the
Probably
state
the
or
feds,
whatever.
probably the
She had a
feds.
government grant to do this, so it would be remembered for all time. Now we can't find it. 45 years later, it's disappeared.
I got Stephanie Gaskins looking
Yeah.
for it down at the Ipswich Museum.
Yeah.
I think Fran Richards is going to get somebody on it at the
She's
library.
got somebody on it.
And-
I am in contact with them.
I forget which relative of the Hodgkins. The Fahey.
Was Ellis,
Fahey.
would it be her-
No, but Fahey, I think, owns that.
Yeah.
That building, and somebody has asked them to look in the attic to see if this
I
paper's
think
in it.
myself, I think it's in the library because it was done by I was involved then. This is early in my so-called
Political
photograph
career?
career,
Oh,
and this
okay,
is
all
when,
right.
just after the guy at the Civil War was over, you know? No,
Louise Hodgkins, her name was Louise Burke.
That's
she
right.
lived on Little Neck in rum running days, and
Yep.
that's why she could relate to rum running. She lived right there.
Yep.
And whatever Louise said, she was pretty authentic
Yep.
in what she said. Let's see that.
Want
that,
the motor?
The boat underneath it.
oh, this one and that one. Oh, that boat.
Now this.
Let's get the machine gun on it.
Yeah, well, this this Coast Guard boat, this one here was involved in chasing the rum runners. At one time, that boat, probably not that one, a boat similar to that, without the machine gun, pulled into the Little Neck Wharf with a Coast Guardsman that had been shot. And so they laid him on the wharf until they could get somebody from downtown to take him to the hospital. Well, you know how long it took for the man to come over Little Neck Road, which was
Oh,
a
man.
big road in those days. It took forever. I'm not sure if he lived or not. However, this was, Louise would probably relate to that because she lived right above the Ipswich Little Neck.
The store then.
She lived next door to the store, the Little Neck Wharf, and the wharf came right down, and they pulled it. Coast Guardsmen laid them on. I remember hearing about it, and I saw the boat the next day that was still on the wharf. As I say, my father was working on the hill.
Yeah.
So that one I can relate to, and I can tell you about Louise Burke Hodgkins. Her story was, it's too bad you can't find it because it'd be pretty authentic what
That's
she knew.
exactly what I was saying. It was
Yeah.
it was a masterful job,
Yeah,
and
I heard.
and it was done just for this reason, so that we wouldn't forget. But
You know, I think one of the things we should comment on is people tend to look back on the rum running as almost a romantic thing. You know what I mean?
well, it wasn't.
But like Jake said, Coast Guard guy got shot. I mean, there was some violence in this because there was a lot of money involved.
I know. I had relatives involved. I'm not going to say where, but I had, and I'm serious. No, I had.
You got any of the jugs in your cellar or anything?
I haven't got any jugs in the cellar, but I've got stories, and then it
Yeah.
was kind of a serious matter. Jake is right. In fact, she mentioned that Coast Guardsman getting shot. She had all of this, and It was. We've got to come up with that somewhere.
I'll tell you though, I don't know if I mentioned to you guys that Louise Jewett, his brother, Ellis Hodgkins,
Yeah.
who I'm sure you know, he lives down in Lauderdale on a boat. And Louise recently gave me his telephone number and says, you ought to talk to him. Unfortunately, and why? Because their father knew a lot of this. Now, Louise wouldn't go so far as to say the father was involved, but he knew a lot. And Ellis supposedly is a font of information. I got to call him. I got his number. And maybe after the show, I'll give him a buzz.
So I have to interrupt because I could tell a lot of stories on this, but I'm not, and because my family, my ancestors, we'll call them my ancestors because it goes back 100 years.
Yeah.
They were involved, and there's a lot of names and stories that shouldn't be told, and I'm not going to tell them,
All right, listen, boys. We're going to have to wrap this up here, but
why is it 20 minutes yet?
Yes, yeah.
Well,
I told you time goes
Give
fast.
us a half an hour.
Let me tell you about Stafford Barn.
Yeah.
Now, there were two barns called Staffords. One was on the corner of Topsfield Road and Stafford Street. It goes down. That was a big barn.
Okay.
And one night, we lived across the street. Now, this was after 33. Prohibition, even though after 33, they're still making bathtub gin. And there was a big explosion one morning, and I was sleeping upstairs. I looked out the window, and the top of that barn was all covered with fire.
Yep.
They had a still in the bottom.
Wow.
The still exploded, came up through the floor and up through the roof.
Yep.
Before it disintegrated and spilled liquor all over the barn, and the barn took fire. And I looked out the window, and I called my father and mother, said, the sun fell down on Stafford's barn, it's all afire. Well, everybody jumped up and looked out the window, and there it was.
These are pictures of the actual what's left after that fire, and you can see the stills and the tanks and all that stuff in there.
It really-
You can also see, the most interesting thing is that you can see the church, you can see the houses, you can pinpoint exactly where it was, and nobody knows when. Jake says it was after 33.
It was after 33.
That means I was born, because that's when I was born.
So
33.
anyway, the only booze they found there were 2 or 3 bottles that was quite tonic bottles that blown away. It was in the field, and 2 or 3 guys picked up, and that was the bathtub gin that they were making.
You know, people say that history, you're an erudite guy, right?
Yeah.
So history has a way of repeating itself. And if you think about this, this little section of history of Ipswich with the rum, we now have 2 rum distilleries in this town.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? You know, it's kind of cool. And in fact, we're going to do an interview with Matt Perry of Turkey Shore Distillery.
If we're running out of time, I got to get this in.
Go ahead.
It's the word, that's the real McCoy.
Yeah.
You know where that came from?
Hatfields and the McCoys.
No, that came from the master rum runner of all times operated out of Miami, Florida, and his name was McCoy. And he was a rich yachtsman type.
Yeah,
And he took in all kinds of, he was a high roller. He probably controlled this sort of thing. But anyway,
So like
if you
B.B.
bought scotch in
Rebozo?
a restaurant somewhere, they'd say, that's the real McCoy. And it was because he brought in the real stuff, like Jake's telling about. But just reading about him, which I've done, is quite interesting. Okay. It was just like this whole operation was like the mafia. We were sort of
Oh, it's drugs. I mean, it was basically
that's
drugs.
right. The Ipswich was, so small it was hardly mentionable, and.
But I'm sure, like Essex, anybody who has a coastline like us in the marsh, you can slip these boats up.
Well,
there,
it was way back in my family. My father's side was up north of here, and they, the places like Portsmouth Navy Yard, and Salisbury Beach and Hampton, they took. That's what they.
I hope you're following this. How Bill is weaving his family's history into this.
I know it. I'm trying to avoid it.
You better go down and see Don Greeno or Arthur Ross.
I'm the only one left. I'm the only nobody can give me the devil in the family because, for me, under me, they don't know. But I know a lot more than I'm telling.
Listen, we might revisit this subject, but we have to go now because we've been going along, and I'd like to thank you, fine gentlemen, and Thank you very much.
You didn't
We'll,
give us more
I gotta
notice
shut up
next
on.
time. Yeah.
We'll see you later, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe it'll spur you on to try to dig in somehow and get some more info here. All right? Yo ho ho and a bottle
You
of
don't
rum.
give us enough time.